Good evening, everybody. This is Michael Tierra, and we're going to talk about some spicy subjects tonight. Matter of fact, we're going to talk about spices, which is a very important aspect of herbal medicine. And in case you need to be reminded, it's the reason why America was discovered in the first place, because people found spices to be so valuable and important that they would do anything to develop direct trade routes to the east, which is where they originated from. And before then, they were taken through long camel caravans all the way across the Sahara Desert to Turkey, Istanbul, which was the hub, and then they were distributed all over Europe. And such common spices as pepper and many others were so valuable that they actually were worth more than gold in those days. And there's a history in England where people paid their rent with peppercorns. So anyway, the human interaction with spices and in food and as well as in medicine probably goes back at least to 50,000 BC. And we all are very familiar with their use in flavoring foods, but they're very high in phytonutrients, and all those wonderful flavors and aromas that come from them are all things that the plant developed, or plants developed to basically ward off bacteria and invasion and to protect themselves. And so they have potent antiviral, antifungal, antibacterial properties. And I mean just about all of them. That's what scent is for. The smell and aromas and tastes are for. We think that they're just something that appeal to us, and they indeed do. But for plants, they're things that protect them. And when these things are studied, they're found to be very potent antibacterial, antiviral, and immune modulatory substances. Matter of fact, they can stimulate all sorts of things, and one of the most common uses for many of the spices we're going to discuss is for increased libido. So the first spice we're going to talk about is parsley. And excuse me, I'm trying to get a little set up here. Parsley is an antioxidant enhancer. It's rich in apogynin, and it helps other antioxidants work better. And about a number of Danish researchers did studies where they ate a diet with almost no antioxidants or flavonoids for 2 weeks, and this decreased two of the body's most powerful generated antioxidants: superoxide dismutase, SOD, and glutathione. Glutathione, of course, is the antioxidant that our body actually produces internally, but it also uses some external sources of glutathione. So this caused a corresponding decrease in cell-damaging oxidation. And then they were given parsley, and the intervention seemed to overcome the decrease as reported in the British Journal of Nutrition. And this resulted in increased levels of SOD and glutathione, proving the antioxidant properties of parsley. So when we go to restaurants, my wife and I, we see the little sprig of parsley on our plate, and usually that's the first thing that we eat. I hope that you'll feel prompted to do the same. Presumably, it will be organic. Parsley is also rich in vitamin A and C, as well as lutein, and it's also effective for preventing age-related macular degeneration, the leading cause of blindness. It's also a good source of B vitamins and minerals, calcium, and iron. And parsley is a traditional remedy to cleanse the kidneys and bladder and the urinary tract. It's one of the main uses I've put to it ever since the beginning of my career as an herbalist. That little bundle of parsley that you see on your screen there is about the size that I would take if somebody had a bladder infection. I bring that home and I'll pour 2 or 3 cups of boiling water over it. I wouldn't boil it because we want to have those uh, uh, volatile oils that the parsley contains. And if you boil them, all the aroma goes out, and also, oops, there goes all the oils. And so if you then have the parsley tea and you drink 2 or 3 cups a day, I've seen it work over and over and over again to get rid of some of the worst bladder and kidney infections that I've encountered. So don't forget to use it that way. Now, very few people think of using parsley root, but clinically, I oftentimes use the root of parsley because I feel like it has a deeper action for healing, and I feel more comfortable being able to combine it with other herbs, like for instance gravel root for kidney and urinary stones, and also for liver conditions and digestive and stomach problems and so forth. So here is a Argentinian chimichurri sauce. This webinar will be available afterwards. We're going to put it online, and the notes will be available to you, so you don't have to struggle to copy everything down here. But you could probably dial this up on Google and come up with the recipe yourself. But it just shows what I thought was a particularly good use for parsley in Argentine, and incorporating a whole number of spices: oregano, cumin, and as well as parsley and garlic, of course. Coriander, cilantro is another great herb for digestive problems. Coriander in foods is oftentimes used in hot, spicy foods because it is a cooling herb, and it helps to neutralize some of the extreme heat and irritating effects of chilies and things like that. So in many Mexican and Indian dishes, chopped coriander leaves are added, and it's very refreshing and helps to neutralize some of the irritating effects of those strong spices. It's also one of the world's oldest spices. The seeds were found in Neolithic archaeological sites dating back to 7000 BCE, as well as in Tutankhamun's tomb, if you can believe that. It's mentioned in the Bible and Exodus and was used as a spice in ancient Greece. So indeed, the use of these spices goes way back into antiquity, and some archaeological evidence of prehistoric men were, and I presume women, were found embalmed or entombed with small pouches were fragments of herbs or seeds. The seeds are commonly used by the Chinese for a wide variety of digestive problems, including gas and constipation. Coriander seed has a descending action. In other words, it helps to bring things down, so it would be good for GERD and for stomach upset and problems of that nature. In Ayurveda and Central America, the leaves are made into a tea for urinary tract infections. And basically, I think of coriander as a type of parsley myself. It's good for allergies, diabetes, anxiety, high blood pressure, insomnia, and vertigo. It's also used for irritable bowel syndrome, and studies published on digestive disease and sciences found it to be 3 times more effective than a placebo in relieving abdominal pain, bloat, cramping, diarrhea, and constipation caused by IBS. Coriander is antispasmodic and relieves abdominal and intestinal spasms. Would you excuse me? My cat is very persistent in wanting to be let in. Hold on for 1 second. Okay, the cats are in. One is named Chow, and the other one's named, guess what? Bella, which I'm told now is the most popular name for pets. So anyway, back to coriander. It also is very good for decreasing the bad LDL cholesterol and increasing good HDL cholesterol. This is a type of very interesting and delicious type of seasoning that you can make at home. It's a Middle Eastern seasoning called Ras El Hanout. The Middle East, well, all the Eastern countries use a lot of spices, and one good reason they're used in the Middle East is because they also serve as preservatives. All these volatile oils that are antibiotic and antiviral actually help preserve and stop meat and other foods from spoiling. It slows that whole process down. And I suppose if we took it internally, that we could call that antioxidant. Well, externally applied to food, it's also kind of an antioxidant. So look at all the spices in this one. It's got salt, which while it's a mineral, it's used as a seasoning. It's got cumin, ginger, turmeric, cinnamon, ground black pepper, white pepper, coriander seed, cayenne, allspice, nutmeg, and cloves. And so this is a recipe called Ras El Hanout. Another favorite spice that we use a lot in beans, use a lot of coriander as well as cumin in beans. And cumin has a characteristic smell, which is called cumin aldehyde. It's a type of oil. While chili gives Mexican food the fire, cumin gives it the zest, and it makes it the most popular of all Mexican spices. And an Indian study found that animals with type 2 diabetes treated with either cumin or glibenclamide, an anti-diabetes drug, found that cumin was equally as effective as reducing cholesterol and triglycerides as other heart-damaging blood fats. Cumin reduced levels of AIC, which is the amount of glucose attached to red blood cells, and benefited the pancreas. Cumin was also able to delay the diabetes causing cataract progression and maturation, as published in pharmacological research. And cumin is rich in phytoestrogens and has been found to have osteoprotective effect, in other words, for osteoporosis, comparable to estrase and estradiol, which is a popular drug for the prevention of osteoporosis and for the prevention of heart disease and breast cancer. So this makes cumin an excellent herb to help postmenopausal women from losing bone mass. In the Middle East, researchers found that cumin suppressed convulsions in animals and chemically induced seizures. In India, cumin was the most effective spice in blocking bacteria associated with food poisoning. No wonder that cumin is one of the 3 essential spices in curry. So with all of these wonderful things that we read about and then we can do with cumin, you maybe ask yourself, well, does that mean that if I just sprinkle a little cumin on food, I'm going to get all these benefits? Well, to some extent, I would say yes. But I would say that if you were going to really be looking to use cumin for some of the things that we're mentioning here, I would buy the cumin fresh like this, in other words, the dried seeds, and then run them through a coffee mill and then put them into into capsules, and as well as sprinkling it on your food. But in that way, since you're not going to want all of your food to taste like cumin or coriander for that matter, putting them into capsules like that will allow you to encapsulate them and then take like 2 or 3 of those with some warm water 3 times a day. And yeah, type 2 diabetes is not too bad if you can get your blood sugar under control and lower the amount of insulin you have to take. That's certainly a good use for it. And for osteoporosis, it might be it certainly seems like a reasonable thing to include cumin, certainly in your diet, and maybe as a part of your daily supplement regime. So this brings us to the next most important herb in curry, which is turmeric. You know, I could probably easily do a whole blog on just turmeric alone, or a webinar on just turmeric alone. My close friend and associate, KP Khalsa, thinks that this is the most important herb in Ayurveda. To me, that means that he uses it one hell of a lot, and I also do as well. It's nature's crusader against disease. Well, when we think of turmeric, we're thinking about something that's very powerfully anti-inflammatory. And with all of the press going out and the information going out over the airwaves these days, how inflammation seems to be the basis for so many disease complexes, or certainly is one of the aspects of the complication of disease, turmeric has a great role to play. Let's just think of a few of these. Arthritis, absolutely. Turmeric is absolutely good for arthritis. For gallbladder and kidney disease and liver disease, for gallstones, I've used turmeric with herbs like gravel root to help dissolve and eliminate gallstones and urinary stones. The same herbs seem to work for both systems. I use turmeric for fighting any inflammation that an over-the-counter aspirin or ibuprofen. As a matter of fact, it's been found to be as effective as those two at least, as well as the prescription drug, which is riddled with side effects. Now it's been found out. Prescription drug for arthritis called Celebrex. So if you catch somebody taking some prescribed arthritic drug by their arthritis rheumatologist, you tell them, hey, look, why don't you give turmeric a try? Now, again, what would be a reasonable way to take turmeric? Certainly, mixing it in food, as with all these herbs, is a good way to be protective. But it's a little hard to get an aggressive protocol to actually treat an established disease using herbs in that way. And to be quite frank with you, these herbs are so strong that oftentimes you need other herbs with them to buffer them a bit, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But again, I would put turmeric into capsules, or you can make a glycerin extract with it. It's a good way, because the glycerin, being somewhat lubricating, will counteract some of the drying effects that turmeric is known to have, especially on some people. So taking it that way, you might take 2 or 3 capsules, double-out size capsules, is standardly what I mostly use, 2 or 3 times a day. Now, talking about, and this by the way is going to go for most of these strong, sharp spices. If you're trying to buffer some of their effects so they're not quite so irritating, think about adding like a 1/4 part slippery elm or marshmallow root, Althea root. I love that word, Althea. And I know a very good herbalist named Althea too, who lives in Chicago. And it's a great name. Anyway, adding these adds a little lubrication to the herbs, so that it makes it for more smoother assimilation of the body. Taking them with oil, like olive oil. Now, turmeric is so effective and so important to take with oil that it's traditionally in India it's considered to be not effective unless you actually saute it or mix it a little bit with ghee, which is clarified butter. you can buy ghee in the store if you are a dummy, or if you want to be smart, and you want to discover the secret of the most of French cooking, you should make it yourself in your own kitchen, and it's very simple to do. You go to the store and you buy well, this is my routine anyway. I buy 2 pounds of organic unsalted butter. It's got to be unsalted, and you put it into a skillet. You open all those little packages up. That's the most annoying part of it all, as far as I'm concerned. But you open all those things. You put in the skillet on a fairly medium to low flame until the entire thing melts in the skillet, and then you turn the flame down and you let it settle out. And pretty soon you'll notice that the saturated fats of the butter will congeal into a white foam and white mass, and some of it will settle to the bottom and some of it will go to the top. And you'll notice that around all of this, and the bulk of it all, is going to be this pure golden oil, which is pure golden oil of butter. And boy, is that ever make any food that you added to sit up and sing. I know we have all this business about, oh, coconut oil is so good for you, and olive oil, of course, I love that. I wouldn't give up olive oil for anything. Well, maybe a little ghee or clarified butter. I have to qualify that. I think it's probably the best and most nutritious oil to use for cooking. In Ayurveda, ghee, and it's also in Tibet, it's considered medicine, and they use it to light. In ancient times, they use it in lamps to light a flame at night, and Ayurveda teaches that ghee is really important for lighting the flame of life and digestion, called Agni, and ghee is the kind of yin oil fuel that feeds the digestive flame of life. Think of it that way. Now you take that and you heat that up, and you put your turmeric in that, and just lightly saute it a little bit, or just mix it with the ghee. Now, when you take that turmeric ghee, it's going to be far more effective than if you just take the turmeric straight off. It's gonna get right deep into the cells where you want it, and into the tissues where you want it the most. So now, turmeric is also effective in treating the recurrence of breast cancer. As a matter of fact, it's been found to prevent the recurrence of breast cancer. It's been found to be as effective as tamoxifen. If you can believe that, ladies, I think that's good news. There's nothing more disappointing than to go through the horrors of having your breast cancer resolved through chemo and radiation therapy and so forth, and have all your hair fall out and just feel like terrible for a long time while you're going through that. And then be told, well, you're cancer free, but nobody really knows, because you can't detect all the cancer that might be in the body, and so you have to go back every 3 months or so to have another check to see if anything is starting to happen again. Well, this is where turmeric plays a role, because it prevents that recurrence. If you get the breast cancer under control, then the turmeric is enough to actually stop it from coming back. So that's a very good use for turmeric, don't you think? Some of the many properties and uses of turmeric, as we've mentioned, are anti-inflammatory, moving blood, preventing cancer, and as an antacid for digestive problems, and it relieves headaches. Curcumin is an ingredient in Tylenol. I didn't know that. Anyway, it is a topical plaster for all skin problems, including parasites. Now, the only problem with turmeric externally is that it makes everything turn yellow. So consider that before you decide to put on some turmeric war paint against those parasites. And it's very specific for the treatment of all gallbladder and liver diseases. I consider the liver as being one of the most important organs in the body in terms of detoxification. Certainly, I think it's more important than the large intestine even, although if the large intestine is clogged up, the liver is going to have to really work overtime. But but the liver is important for neutralizing not only toxins that we produce that are taken in from environment and from food, but also the toxins that we produce as a result of stress and stressful thinking in our lives. Uh, by that I mean we are generating uh, hormones that allow us to deal with certain kinds of events that may occur. Some of them being purely emotional events, stress, and we feel our adrenaline rising, we feel our hormones being going topsy turvy, and all these kinds of things. Well, all that gets into your bloodstream, and it's secreted by adrenal glands and other kinds of endocrine glands to prepare you to deal with the crisis. Now, if your liver is blocked, what do you think happens to those kinds of toxins? And basically, what they do is they continue to circulate throughout your system over and over and over and over again, until finally, in desperation, your liver, which is working overtime dealing with all these external toxins, looks at some of these internal toxins and scratches its livery head like a worn out secretary at the end of the day with her desk pile full of orders and papers. And there's one thing that comes to her mind before she turns off the light and goes home, which is file it. And indeed, that's what the liver does. It files it, and it puts it into the Kupffer cells, and it stores it in other cells in the body. All these toxic thoughts turned into hormones are stored in different parts of your body. Now, if you ever wonder why women get breast cancer, well, a lot of it has to do with the fact that the breasts are so closely related to the liver. They're in close proximity to the liver for sure, and they're handy receptacles not only for nursing children, but for storing things that the liver can't deal with. And when they stay in there a long time, that kind of irritation can be what generates the sort of climate that where cancer can arise. And Chinese medicine considers that calling those kinds of lumps that form in the breast, and lumps and fibroids that form in other parts of the body in women particularly who are so sensitive to stress. They call those things, they describe them as qi stagnation. And the liver is responsible for circulating qi. So we're getting far off from turmeric here, but the idea is that turmeric basically helps to neutralize those hormones by activating liver processes where they actually are discharged. And one other thing about all that is that many times people experience depression, and they experience feelings that arise seemingly for no reason whatsoever, and sometimes it arises as a process of a cleanser, a detoxification process that you're going through. It's called retracing of old symptoms. What happens is that as your body is evolving and changing from day to day, some of these hormones go back into circulation into your bloodstream, and they trigger these thoughts that were associated with when they were first created. And these thoughts and these feelings and these bummers and these bad feelings come up for seemingly no reason whatsoever. So if you ever wonder why, for instance, people get depressed during the time of menstruation, it's because all these hormones are being dumped from a month of stress, and they're being dumped into the bloodstream, and as they go out, they revisit all these old feelings that are pent up inside of you. So that's how turmeric works to neutralize some of that. Pharmacological action of turmeric. It increases bile secretion, bile salts, and bilirubin. Bilirubin is the stuff that colors our stool and makes it the brown color that it is. And one of the diagnostic indications of hepatitis is when we start having clay-colored stool or stool without any color in it. That's a sign of liver failure and lack of bilirubin from the gallbladder and from the liver. So turmeric also contracts the gallbladder, and it resolves gallstones, it improves appetite, and it has an excitatory action on the uterus, which can cause paroxysmal contraction lasting 5 to 7 hours. I don't know if that's really a good thing or not, but anyway, it can do that, probably in a pretty high dose. It's analgesic, meaning it relieves pain. Well, if it's going to relieve inflammation, it's going to relieve pain, so that those things go together, and pain is usually associated with inflammation. And of course, it's antibacterial and antifungal. It's easy to think of golden seal when you look at turmeric, and indeed they're both yellow in that way, and they both are strongly antibacterial and antifungal. And whether the color or its constituents are working separately or together depends on what herbalist you're talking to. It's antihypertensive. Once you get these kinds of tensions of toxicity out of your system, you're going to feel less tense internally, because there's internal backup of stagnation and tension that causes the hypertension. It increases fibrinolysis by inhibiting the agglutination of platelets. By that it means that it doesn't allow your blood to congeal too much and form clots and other kinds of nasty accumulations that might lead to stroke. It prevents the progression from HIV to AIDS. This is a very important use of turmeric, and indeed herbalists who treat AIDS oftentimes consider turmeric to be a very important part of that treatment. And of course, turmeric is anti-cancer. And turmeric protects and reduces cancer by causing cancer that causes DNA damage. In terms of its anti-cancer properties, even 1% in the daily diet of turmeric was found to inhibit benzopyrene-induced cancer. So benzopyrene is the highly toxic chemical found in cigarette smoke, which can cause stomach cancer, stomach tumors, mammary tumors in mice. A 0.2% in the daily diet inhibited the development of colon cancer. So if you have any concerns about colon cancer, or know anybody who has any, it is one of those forms of cancer that has some association with being with an inherited predisposition. Including turmeric in the diet would not be a bad idea. A topical ointment containing 5% curcumin applied to cancerous skin growths reduced the foul smell, itching, pain, and discharge of the fluid from the wound. Now, that's a pretty small percentage of curcumin or turmeric in that ointment. I have used external ointments on cancers like breast cancer and so forth, and I would use very strong ointments and very strong paste, and have found in many cases that the cancers were reduced. And in this case, again, the limiting factor is that curcumin and turmeric stains, so keep that in mind. So now we get to one of the cornerstones and central aspects of my therapy, and I dare say the therapy of just about every Ayurvedic doctor I've ever encountered and have sat with and encountered many through my career of healing, which now is spanning practically 40 years as an herbalist. Hold on for a minute, let me get a drink of water. Kitchari, or kitchari sometimes it's called. It's got different spellings. This is a fine way to eat a diet that that provides sound nourishment without it's as well as providing healthy natural detoxification. Kitchari is to Ayurvedic medicine what congee is to Chinese medicine. Congee is basically white rice that has been diluted like 1/12, 1/15 part rice that's cooked for a long time in water until it's like just like a soup, and the Chinese have that every morning for cereal. But it's also given as a healing food when people have very weak digestion, and they would give congee every day, and then sometimes they would add mung beans to it, so it would be called mung bean congee, which is basically what kitchari is. But this, in this case, is going to be mung bean congee with turmeric, cumin, and coriander seed, and ghee, clarified butter. Uh, Now, the issue about the use of white rice in either of these healing foods is one that will certainly raise a lot of people's eyebrows, because we're so accustomed to thinking how nutritious, and indeed it is, brown rice is for you. But all grains have something called anti-nutrients. And for that reason, all whole grains should be soaked at least a day, sometimes even 2 days is better, to allow the sprouting process to begin, so some of these anti-nutrients can be neutralized. The anti-nutrients in grains are basically things that would that when they're eaten, animals would eat these seeds. They would go out and poop them out all over the place, and the grains would then go piggyback and go traveling all over the countryside and be able to sprout everywhere, because they weren't completely digested in the animal's gut. And so obviously we don't, when we're eating food, we don't necessarily want the food to be working against us and preventing itself from being digested. That's not what the human evolution is all about in terms of diet. So soaking grains is one way to neutralize some of those anti-nutrients that are found in them, and the same thing would go for beans. In case you are one of those, as most of us are, who get a little extra gas from eating beans, one of the reasons is because they're not being digested very well. And so soaking them and pressure cooking beans is really, I think, an important, vital. But getting back to grains, the more fiber that's on them, the harder they are to digest. And the idea of eating kitchari or congee as a food is to basically, we're not talking about building up nutrition here. We're talking about basically giving your digestion a rest and giving you enough calories so that you have enough energy to be able to function at the same time. So there are some times in life when we need to retreat from being from amping ourselves up with highly dense nutrients, and give our body a chance to just kind of rest and have things that are very easily assimilated. One of those times, of course, is when somebody's really sick and you give them a heavy diet. You know, no matter how much nutrients there are in it, it's going to be very hard for them to utilize it. And that's when cooking white rice is going to be better than brown, even if the brown rice is soaked. And the same thing for kitchari and kitchari. When you're eating it, you know, if you're eating it for therapeutic purpose, you want to eat it in such a way that you're going to get sufficient calories, but at the same time make it very, very easy to digest. So we emphasize the use of a half cup of yellow mung beans and a half cup of white basmati rice. Yellow mung beans are basically those green mung beans, except with the outer fiber, the outer green part of the mung bean removed. And white basmati rice is what it says. And so you can see that this is cooked in 6 cups of water. I prefer to have kitchari when I decide to have it more soupy and more watery, more like a stew than than as a solid kind of dish. So I might even add more water than 6 cups. But you know, if you make it, you can easily add more water if you think it's too thick. But you can't take it out unless you just cook it longer and let the water evaporate. So I wish I could just continue to rave on about the use of kitchari, but Suffice to say that if you're going through a cleansing process in India in Ayurveda called Panchakarma, uh, and that might go on for a period of three months, you're told to eat kitchari every day, and the other at least one meal, but maybe even all 3 meals going to eat kitchari because it both detoxifies and provides nourishment at the same time. Uh, when I see patients, I oftentimes will put them on a kitchari diet for as much as 2 to 3 weeks, just eating only kitchari 3 times a day. That's a great way to lose weight, especially if it's not really heavy, which is what a lot of people make the mistake of doing and making it too thick. Doesn't mean you can't have thicker and more densely nutritious kitchari. That's your choice. But if you're using it for detoxifying, weight reduction, and for healing, the more watery and more soupy it is, the better. And anytime you're hungry, you just eat a small bowl of it. Now, this basic dish is something that admits of adding many things to it, of course, and so you can adding all kinds of different vegetables can further complement a dish like this and create a little variety in the process. But these spices are extremely important, and you can see that the ghee is important also. And I'm glad that I had the opportunity to tell you how to make ghee, because I hope you all will go out and buy some 2 pounds of clarified butter and make your own ghee, and don't buy that stuff in the store, which is way overpriced and expensive. So anyway, you're going to add the the turmeric and the coriander and the cumin seed, which are the 3 basic spices of all curries. You're going to add that to the ghee, which is sauteing in a pan, and it's only going to be for probably hardly a minute, maybe, until you begin to smell this absolutely incredible aroma that just rises up, that reminds you of the most delicious Indian food you ever had in your life. And then you immediately take it off, and you have your mung beans and rice already pre-cooked off to the side, and now you just pour it all into the big skillet and stir it around, and now you have kitchari. And I'll make enough of that to kind of go on for like 3 days before I'll make it again and do a cleansing diet, doing only kitchari for 3 days that way, and you'll find that it treats arthritis, it treats all the inflammatory conditions. Why? Well, you got these spices in there. It treats digestive problems. It normalizes your digestion, and it's just a great healing food. Okay, now we get to the red hot chilies. Now, I began my career as an herbalist. I'm sorry the phone is ringing. You and I will both ignore that telephone for now. So we're going to continue with our discussion about cayenne pepper. Cayenne pepper, I began when I first started studying herbal medicine. I studied with a guy named Dr. Christopher. There he is right there, John Raven Christopher. He died in 1983. And he in turn was very much influenced by that guy on the left called Dr. Samuel Thompson, and Dr. Samuel Thompson created a whole system of medicine that rivaled the mainstream medicine throughout the 19th century. He was a cantankerous person who was very anti-intellectual, which ultimately was a downfall, but nevertheless, he was very anti-intellectual. He said you didn't have to think that hard to be a healer, and you just needed to know how to do a few simple things with your herbs, and you can cure everything. And so he wrote a little book that got reprinted and circulated all over the country. He developed a course that he taught, and everybody did this course, and he incurred the wrath of medical doctors all over the country who were indulging in heroic practices of bleeding people to death and other severe types of practices that oftentimes led to people's death. Much in the way that a lot of the practices of contemporary mainstream medicine does today. Maybe we need another Samuel Thompson in our midst. But anyway, Dr. Christopher comes from that line of doctors that go back to Samuel Thompson, who was known as Cayenne doctors because they used so much cayenne in their practice. Ironically enough, this being the fact that even though cayenne is not a Native American herb, and Samuel Thompson claimed that he learned his herbal medicine from Native Americans. So you figure that one out, and I don't think anybody has quite gotten it yet. So the guy in the middle has this very strange name. Boy, I'd hate to be a doctor with the name of Coffin, but there was a doctor in Santa Cruz here called Dr. Payne. So I guess there needed to be a Dr. Coffin also. Anyway, Dr. Coffin was very important in bringing the teachings of 19th century herbal medicine, which was very lively, to Samuel Thompson and others to England. And many years ago, when I was teaching in England, I would go to bookstores and look for books, and I came across one of Dr. Coffin's books, This Guide to Health. I actually have a copy of that, and he was using a lot of the things that Thompson was describing, and Coffin actually revitalized the whole English herbal medical scene, which has since developed since then, because it was in a state of severe retreat by the 19th century in England. So let's see here. I hope the guy who made this wonderful chart doesn't mind my borrowing it. I forgot who it is, but anyway, this shows a lot of the great uses that how cayenne affects the body. He says it's a biological response modifier. Well, God, I don't know what the devil that means, but anyway, let's go on. It thins the blood. Yes, indeed it does, and it lowers fat levels. Yes, it does that. Blocks pain. Well, now everybody's agreed cayenne is a good thing to block pain, especially externally. What do they call it? The P factor or something, or the C factor, whatever. They sell cayenne plasters in drugstores now. You put it on, and it blocks the nerve fibers that transmit the sensation of pain to the brain. It's a general stimulant. Well, anybody that's ever taken the cayenne pepper knows what that means. It thins and loosens or increases mucus. And it's antibacterial. It protects the body from toxins. It inhibits cancer. It activates pain sensors on the tongue and skin. It contains valuable nutrients. Well, it's a pepper, but I doubt whether you're going to eat enough of it to get the nutrients from that the nutrients of cayenne are going to make that much of a difference. It releases endorphins. So after you've gone through the heroic stress of taking the cayenne, all of a sudden you feel relieved that it's passed. Antioxidants block the rusting in the cells and improves nerve conduction. So now we're going to get back to my beloved teacher, Dr. Raymond Christopher, the man who single-handedly saved herbalism in North America from extinction, in my opinion. I encountered him in one of his fiery lectures in Vancouver, BC, in the late 60s, early 70s, and this guy was a motivational speaker like nobody's business, as far as I'm concerned. He was he could get an audience to believe just about anything he said, and do just about anything he told them to do. And indeed, I was one of those people that found myself in the audience where Dr. Christopher was up there just raising everybody, the hair on the back of people's necks, telling us all these incredible cures that he did, and I believe that he did them. But every lecture he would start out to prove the safety of cayenne pepper and the importance of it. He'd start out with 3 heaping tablespoons of cayenne pepper, He'd stand up there and he'd take 3 heaping tablespoons, swill it in a little glass of water, drink the whole thing down, and slowly clear his throat, and then launch off into his lecture with hardly batting an eye. To dissuade anybody from the idea that just because it's hot and spicy, or because of, or that it might be irritating to the system in any way whatsoever, because he was going to tell you all the different uses of cayenne pepper, and like with Samuel Thompson, it figured into just about everything that he gave. Every formula that Dr. Christopher had always had some cayenne pepper, because he considered it to be something that amplified or delivered the properties of other herbs to it. I still think that is a great formulary idea. A small amount of cayenne pepper, and then the other herb that both of these famous 19th century derived doctors used was lobelia, which was one of the most powerful antispasmodics I know. A small amount of cayenne pepper and a small amount of lobelia added to any herbal formula really doubles, triples, quadruples the delivery and the effect of that formula. I know that, and it's very, very effective. The problem is nobody's going to drink a tea with that stuff in it. So we're talking about only giving it to people in this way, in capsules, and giving powdered herbs, which I think is a very good way to deliver herbs. So cayenne contains the alkaloid capsaicin, which is responsible for its heat. If there's no capsaicin in pepper, then there's no heat. And what you have is a sweet pepper then. It's indestructible. Neither cold nor heat will douse its burning sensation. And incidentally, in case you ever thought you'd like to really get enough vitamin C from taking cayenne pepper, it's very high in vitamin C and vitamin A. It's used for allergies, colds, and flus, and sore throat. I got up to the place back in those days, and I can't do it anymore, but I used to take a teaspoon of cayenne pepper easily, just swallow it down. And I would sometimes, if I got a sore throat, I'd take it every half hour, every 15 minutes, every half hour, and it would knock the sore throat right out. And anytime it started to come back, I'd do another dose of it until it completely went away. Dr. Christopher also described a case where a young girl accidentally had cayenne pepper fall off a shelf and get into her eyes, quite a lot of it. And the parents, of course, were extremely worried about what effect this would have on their daughter's eyes. And Dr. Christopher happened to have been around. He said, just rinse her eyes off, and it's going to be fine. And it was. Not only was it fine, but her eyesight was tremendously sharper afterwards. And that led him to the idea of creating his eye wash formula that I don't think you can buy anymore, but it's one that he used and I have used for cataracts and for improving eyesight, which uses a very small amount of cayenne mixed with eyebright and raspberry leaves and golden seal. All of these are powders, and there's and a small amount of cayenne pepper. Now, it's going to be an ordeal to do this, believe me, but it does make your eyes stronger and clearer. And so what you do is you put the powder into a cup of water and let it settle down, and then you pour off only the top part so you don't get any of the grit from the bottom of the herbs, and then you rinse both your eyes out with this. And so it just stings a little bit for a short while, and then your eyes feel just bright and clear and wonderful. And so I have had people have their cataracts dissipate with that treatment, but it is and certainly no damage was done. Now these are only some of the heroic uses that cayenne pepper was used by Samuel Thompson and Dr. Christopher, and I think about those today as we have created a kind of herbalism where people don't taste and don't experience herbs in the way that they used to accept that if you got sick, you were going to take your bitter brew and you were going to deal with the inconvenience of the extreme spiciness of an herb. Nowadays, we're not too eager to undergo those things. Things are given to us in handy-dandy little tincture form, and oftentimes the dose is too low to do much good. Or they're given in granulated powders, like the Chinese herbs that people would cook in their kitchen are granulated into extracts and taken that way, which are effective. And you don't have to smell up the whole house drinking your Chinese tea that way. Or again, as I said, they're taken in capsule form. But back in the day, this stuff was taken straight up, as well as a lot of other kinds of heroic uh, uses of herbs that most people would shy away from today. So you see all the other uses for cayenne pepper, and this is from the Dr. Christopher tradition that I get all of this, and a tradition that I was very deeply imbued with when I really apprenticed with him. I sponsored him in the first seminars that he gave in California, and even was the one where he was busted for practicing medicine without a license and was incarcerated for $50,000 bail. Anyway, Dr. Christopher is a hero of herbal medicine and should not, and his teachings, nor he as a person, should not be forgotten. He was a great, noble man. So here are cayenne peppers for pain and pleasure. So cayenne plasters that you'll see everywhere. But recently I was on a trip to Russia, and a lot of people started coming down with the flu. It was on a river cruise, and I noticed that they were, of course, in Russia, vodka is taken for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. But they had a particular type of vodka there called Nimirov vodka, and I've since found out that it's actually made in the Ukraine, in Kiev, and it's honey and red pepper vodka, and that's what we took, and that's what a lot of people would take for if they're beginning to come down with colds and flus, they would start taking Nimirov vodka. I tell you honestly, it is the most delicious vodka I've ever had in my life, and I wish I could find more of it. I do know that there are some specialty shops in the United States that sell it, but that's about all I can say about it. But if you can get a hold of some Nimirov vodka, I think you have a treat in store for you, and it's good medicine also. So cayenne has a well-established reputation for the cardiovascular system, treating enhancing blood circulation, treating cardiovascular disease, weak heart, and arrhythmias. Dr. Christopher gave many stories, and I heard of many people who have stopped a heart attack by taking a teaspoon of cayenne pepper. Treating atherosclerosis, hardening of the arteries, high blood lipids, aneurysms, embolisms, and blood clots. So we talked about how to take cayenne pepper, and I guess if you really want to be an herbalist, and some of you are my students who are on here, I'm sure I have certain kind of initiations that are really important that you have to at least do once, and one of them is to take at least a quarter to a half a teaspoon of cayenne pepper straight, and you just put it in a little bit of water, or you mix it with a little olive oil and put it in your mouth and swallow it down, and just in a few minutes, don't worry, the burn will go away, and you'll feel real nice and warm and cool and wonderful. Nature's Way and Solar Ray makes a cayenne pepper which they call capsi-cool and cool cayenne, which includes something called glucosamine, and it's pretty good also. Black pepper. There's been so much talk of cayenne pepper, and black pepper is just about everywhere. Today, I don't know about today, but many years ago at least, probably more today, the sale of black pepper accounted for 1/4 of the sale of all spices, and it was, as I started out the lecture talking about, worth its weight in gold. It was considered to be more valuable than gold. It's a native to India. and it figures very prominently in both Indian and Chinese medicine. It was so well known in the Middle Ages in Europe, only the wealthy could afford it, and its status was measured by how much one had stored away. Ancient Greece, pepper has held such a high prestige it was not only used as a seasoning, but as a currency and sacred offering in temples. It was used to both honor the gods and to pay taxes and ransoms. During the fall of ancient Rome, the invading barbarians were even honored by being given black pepper. The reason pepper was so cherished was that it served important culinary purposes. And this would go basically for all the spices. Not only did it give a little zest and interest to foods that normally would be kind of bland, and thereby with interest comes more digestive secretions that help you utilize food more effectively. But black pepper also, and all the spices, all these strong spicy things were used to help preserve food, and because there was no refrigeration in those days, and so they would sprinkle the meats with black pepper, and it would not spoil, and consequently that's one of the reasons why it was so valuable. As I said, the first reason anybody dared to venture out into the wide open seas of the Atlantic, which in those days must have been like somebody imagining themselves flying to the moon, because you didn't know where you're going to wind up. But there was a vague suspicion that somehow or another was going to get you somewhere, and they hoped that where it would get you if you just took off from Portugal or Spain or Italy, and you just headed in the direction whatever it is, it'll get you somewhere to the Middle East, where they knew pepper originated somewhere around India and so forth, and therefore they could have a more efficient way of getting it back to Europe. And it was on this journey that Columbus and Magellan and all those people were financed based on doing that. And so when Columbus landed, he didn't know really where he was. I mean, actually, there was no way of knowing where he was. He basically knew he wasn't. He knew he wasn't in India because there wasn't any black pepper around, and there were some Indians and so forth. And it was at that time that they brought him red pepper, and it didn't quite suit him. But on Columbus's third voyage, a doctor said, "Well, maybe we should bring some of this red pepper, which was Cayenne, back, because the Aztecs and the Mayans were using it extensively, because it grew in the New World." And maybe it could start an industry amongst herbalists in Europe who would like to use cayenne or red pepper at least for medicine. The idea of using it for food at that point didn't occur to them. Anyway, all the herbalists in Europe at that time rejected it. They said it was just ugly, horrible stuff, and they wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. And it was some 70 years later before red pepper finally began to be included in the materia medicas as having a use. Meantime, guess what? No black pepper. And and they were perfecting, however, their trips around the Cape of Good Hope, and able to start shipping spices that way, as well as on the trail across the deserts of the Middle East. It just so happens that black pepper has a lot of medicinal properties, and it's still being researched. It's good for digestion, cancer, arthritis, preventing Alzheimer's. Oh, it needs a Z in there. Anti-depression, improving balance in the elderly, and quit smoking. Lower blood pressure, helps prevent heart disease. Yeah, if you feel like having a cigarette, take some black pepper. Okay, we'll get into that in a minute. The piperine, which is an alkaloid in black pepper, stimulates the taste buds. It triggers the pancreas to start producing digestive enzymes, and it also tones the lining of the intestines, which boosts digestive power in numerous ways, including more efficient absorption of foods and faster transit time. In one study, gastroenterologists found that 1.5 grams of black pepper, that's about 1/20th of an ounce, sped up the time it takes for food to move all the way through the GI tract. A slow transit time is linked to many problems, from constipation to colon cancer. The researchers concluded that black pepper is of, quote, of clinical importance in the management of various gastrointestinal disorders. Try to tell your local gastroenterologist about that. Black pepper has also been shown to relieve flatulence and calm nausea. It's not recommended as a post-abdominal surgery or for patients with ulcers. In terms of cancer, lab studies have shown that pepperine may play a role in the prevention or treatment of cancer. Researchers discovered that the regular use of black pepper inhibited the growth of human colon cancer cells. In animal studies of lung cancer, pepperine changed the levels of several enzymes, producing an anti-tumor effect. So black pepper extract added to the diet of mice with breast cancer increased lifespan by 65%. And arthritis, Korean researchers found pepperine reduced compounds that worsen inflammation, especially in rheumatoid arthritis, and eased other arthritis symptoms. That's only some of the uses for black pepper. You might think that pepper, either red or black pepper, because it's so spicy and hot, that it's going to raise your blood pressure. But no, what it does is it equalizes circulation in your body, so the blood isn't pooled in one place, causing that pressure. It helps to distribute it and ease it. And by doing that, the pressure in general decreases. Both cayenne and black pepper will do that. Black pepper is also used in Ayurvedic medicine, along with the next long pepper that I'm going to talk about, is another form of black pepper. Oh my goodness, I'm going to forget that one. Did I just mess things up? No. There we go. So where were we? Oh, black pepper and red pepper both helps to lower blood pressure by equalizing circulation throughout the body. Finally, adding peppers, as Samuel Thompson hit upon, and Dr. Christopher and all the other doctors who came from that lineage of Cayenne doctors, that it enhanced or increased the bioavailability of any other herbs that are taken with it. And you only need to add a small amount. And studies were shown where black pepper particularly was used along with antibiotics, which reduced the dose of, which allowed a person to take a much lower dose of antibiotics and have as strong or stronger effect than if they took a higher dose. I think this is very good information that I would love to see part of mainstream medicine at this point, since it is a medically researched fact that I can actually point to, and you could find if you were curious to Google it up and look for it. But anyway, it's a gem for herbalists, because if you combine any herb with a small amount of any of these peppers, and giving it in a capsule form, obviously because of the spiciness, you're going to get a far greater effect, double, triple, quadruple the effect than if you were to just take the herbs without it. And by equalizing circulation, it also would improve the balance in the elderly. It would treat depression, help Alzheimer's, because it increases circulation in the brain and lowers and prevents bleeding. Applying pepper directly to a bleeding wound oftentimes is one of the ways to stop it. So Chinese herbalists classify black pepper as acrid and hot, having a special effect on the stomach and large intestines. using it for cold, sluggish digestion to stimulate appetite and stomach pain. That's an oversimplification if I ever saw it, but it's useful to have these simplifications if you're in a clinic and you're seeing patients and you need to come up with something really quick, and you're considering, and you happen to stumble upon the possibility of the use of black pepper for gastrointestinal problems. Yeah, that's a good use for it. But we already talked to many of the other uses. Another type of black pepper is called long pepper, called pipli. At first, pipli was an herb that actually was you could only buy in Indian import stores. But recently, Leslie came home from when I told her to get some black pepper from the local market, and she brought home one of those pepper grinders, and she didn't notice that basically it wasn't black pepper, it was pipli pepper that was in the pepper grinder. It doesn't happen to grind as well in those things as the peppercorns do. It's a fantastic herb because it treats mucus and dries mucus up in the body, and all the things that black pepper does. And oftentimes they're combined together with ginger in a one of the Ayurvedic major combinations called trikatu. Trikatu means three. Katu means three spicy herbs, and that's black pepper, pipli, and pipli, long pepper, and black pepper and ginger. These are powders, and they're mixed with a little bit of melted honey to form a paste, and it's added to any it's taken to dry up mucus, to prevent allergies, because it keeps the circulation going, so that the body doesn't get caught up trying to deal with allergens locally. You have to start it just before the allergy season, however. And by treating, helping digestion, the excess mucus that happens from poor digestion doesn't accumulate to cause the allergies to occur. There's also a treatment for treating hypothyroid using pipli pepper, and starting out with a small amount and increasing to like 36 capsules or by within mid-month, and then gradually decreasing down to nothing at the end over the course of 30 days, essentially. And this treatment is a whole book that I have written on it. Is used for helping low thyroid conditions. So there's all that. Now we get to one of my all-time favorite herbs. We always have it on hand, and if we go to Hawaii, we immediately go and try to get a piece of ginger to keep on hand in our refrigerator. I have it today in my refrigerator, and I have it all the time. And it's of all the spicy tasting herbs, it's the most pleasant, and it has the most versatility, I believe. Of course, everybody knows, well, I can't say everybody, but most people know about ginger as something, for instance, for dealing with nausea and for seasickness and motion sickness, and indeed it does work pretty well. But ginger added to food will increase the nutritional properties of food by at least 50 to 100%, because it enhances absorption of nutrients so effectively. Being warm and warming and circulating. I as a matter of course now, because I start out each day with an incredible high protein smoothie using almond milk and banana and different herbs, powdered reishi mushroom, powdered cordyceps, and other herbs that I put into it, some chia seeds, and I like to throw all kinds of things into my smoothie, and it's great, and and I take it, and I get dense amount of protein with very little calories. A good way if you're watching your weight to start out each day. Well, as of the last few months, I've taken a piece of ginger like this, about the size of the tip of my thumb, actually that big, believe it or not, and I'll chop it up real small, and I'll just throw that in the blender. And that, smoothies are known to be kind of a little mucusy and a little cold, and so the ginger helps to antidote it and increase its assimilation. It's fantastic. So it's a great way to use fresh ginger. We all love ginger ale, and that's one of the things that people reach for if they have any kind of stomach upset. Unfortunately, commercial ginger ale doesn't have any ginger in it. Excuse me. But there are, if you go to better natural food stores, you'll find ginger ale made with real ginger, and it's wonderful. But when children start getting that mucusy colds and coughs, the go-to treatment is basically to make ginger tea with honey. If you want to spice it up a little bit, and they'll accept it, throw in a little garlic as well. But just ginger tea and honey will work like wonders. And if your kids come home with a little runny nose, give them ginger tea and honey, and you see that it goes away immediately. Ginger is antispasmodic. It relieves spasms and cramps. And it's one of the great external treatments to use for trauma, for injuries and sprains. And you make ginger tea by cutting a few slices of fresh ginger into some boiling water until it turns yellow. You dip a cloth in it and apply it topically with a heating pad, and renew that periodically, and it feels so good if you have back pain or pain in your leg and so forth. It relieves the tension of the pain, and it's very healing. It's also anti-inflammatory, like an herb that we just talked about that it's closely related to, which is turmeric. Both herbs are very powerful anti-inflammatories. So ginger is very good for arthritis and rheumatic problems. So ginger, unlike a lot of the things we talked about, works very well as a tea. And just taking a few slices in some boiling water and putting in boiling water and adding a little honey to taste, or just taking it as is a very pleasant drink. As a fomentation, we talked about that. And people who have problems with weakness and digesting any food at all, or vegetarians who refuse to eat meat and need high quality protein, I will recommend to them warm scalded milk with honey and ginger. When milk is scalded, a lot of the allergies that people complain about to milk seems to not be there. The protein in milk that is dense, when it's cold, sticky, when it's subjected to scalding and heat, it dissipates and breaks up. And even people who have milk allergies will be able to tolerate milk that way. And adding ginger and honey to it is a good way for vegetarians who are malnourished and need more protein in their diet, to build up their protein quota and their strength along with it. We talked about tricot, the combination of black pepper, pipply long pepper, and ginger. This is basically the recipe. And now talking about cloves. It's a remedy for pain and acid reflux. Everybody thinks about cloves and clove oil, and it is indeed effective, applied as an essential oil to the gums to relieve a toothache and as well as other pains in the body. It's also used for vomiting, nausea, hiccups, diarrhea, coldness, and pain. A little bit of cloves taken internally, maybe a quarter teaspoon, half a teaspoon, stirred in some water, is very good for acid reflux. And it figures very prominently in formulas in Ayurveda for that purpose. And this is the formula. It's called Avipadikar. And we have a Avipadikar that in planetary now, I'm happy to say, because this is so effective for GERD. Many people can get off of the Prilosec and other kinds of drugs that block your stomach acids, which is exactly what you don't want to do if you have GERD, gastroesophageal reflux disease. You don't want to block your stomach acid. But this formula, notice it starts out with cane sugar. And it's got many herbs in it. It has the, if you look down here, it has ginger and black pepper and pipli. Hey, we just saw those herbs. That's called Trikatu. Then it's got amlaki, bibitaki, and haritaki. Well, we haven't seen that yet. I'm going to talk about that combination next month. That's triphala. And when I say that triphala is given to every patient that an Ayurvedic doctor sees, well, here it is again. It just pops up in every formula like this. And then it's got cardamom, and it's got clove blood. And what's the cane sugar all about? Hey, I thought sugar was bad for you. Well, sugar is cooling. And I personally think that even if in our product, we don't have sugar in it because people would shy away from it. They wouldn't buy it. But if you were to ask me face on, do I think they should take AviPro, the planetary Avipadikar for GERD with sugar? I'd say yes. You should probably take a half a teaspoon of sugar when you take a couple of tablets of the planetary Avipadikar. It'll work much better because the sugar is cooling and helps the gastrointestinal system. It soothes it and allows it to utilize the other herbs more effectively. Nutmeg, called ruduku in Chinese medicine. It's pungent, warm, and it affects the spleen, stomach, and large intestine. It's anti-diuretic. It warms the spleen and pancreas and stomach and the large intestine, increases appetite. And it's for chronic diarrhea before dawn, vomiting, abdominal distension, and the dose in Chinese medicine is 3 to 9 grams. That's usually divided into that much, or half that much twice a day. Overdose, it's narcotic. And a little known use for nutmeg, and it's very effective, is for insomnia. And we got this from KP. You mix freshly ground nutmeg with honey and take about 1.5 teaspoons before retiring. Now, that's quite a bit, but it really makes for stubborn insomnia. This treatment, I can't tell you how many people have found that this works when nothing else will. It's maybe as good or better than Ambien. So nutmeg is good for pain relief, high cholesterol, anxiety, wrinkles, and sexual desire. Anything that's going to stimulate your body is probably going to stimulate your libido as well, so we'll just take that as given for most of these things. Cardamom, the guardian of the stomach. It's one of my favorite herbs for digestion. It's related to ginger, and I put it into almost any formula where people are having trouble with digestion, with bloating, swelling abdomen, nausea, heartburn, acidity. Talking about acidity and heartburn and treating that, one of my early teachers, Norma Myers, used to say that if you have any problems like that, you go to your spice cabinet and take a pinch of every spice in your spice cabinet, just a small pinch, mix them all together and swallow it with some water. And she said that treats all stomach problems like that would come about, including heartburn. It's antipathogenic. It inhibits bacteria, viruses. It treats halitosis. It's good for oral health, mouth ulcers, infections of the mouth and throat. It's good for depression. You make a tea of the crushed seeds, and of course there's the ever-present aphrodisiac use. It's used in Ayurveda for a cold womb, erectile dysfunction, and impotence. Our garlic needs no introduction, and there's an old saying that garlic is good for every disease except the one that it causes, and you can imagine what that one would be. As far back as 3000 BCE, Charak, the father of Ayurveda, claimed that garlic strengthens the heart and keeps the blood fluid. And indeed, today scientists have found that garlic is a very effective herb for atherosclerosis and for lowering, for regulating blood pressure and for lowering lipids in the blood. I personally have found garlic very effective for upper respiratory disease as well as infections generally. It's probably the most antibiotic single herb of anyone that I know. And it's good antibiotic, antiviral. I'll give you a little tip because we're into flu season right now. And I do think that if you get the flu, you should saturate yourself with garlic. And I probably in the next slide I'm going to talk about, there it is, my favorite ways to take garlic. This is probably an Italian way in honor of my past heritage, and I happen to like it because it's the way I like when restaurants serve it this way. And everybody should partake of garlic. If one person didn't, then they're going to get garlicky. They're going to get repulsed maybe by the smell of garlic on everybody else's breath. So if you see anybody taking garlic and you want to get close to them, you better take it yourself. So you mince several cloves of garlic in olive oil. Just mash it all up and mix it in the olive oil, and then take a little bit of bread and just dip it in it and eat it. Now, colds and flus are a bad scene because, of course, they're bad. They're inconvenient and all kinds of things. But the worst part of it all is the fact that they can get worse and they can linger. And they can go down and settle in your chest for a long, long time, and basically really put you out of commission and make you feel miserable for a lot longer, even after the cold and flu virus has been spent in the body, because these viruses are self-limiting. They just, after a few days, they just kind of like die. So what happens then is that if you run down, then the bacteria can take over. So I believe that taking garlic hourly or every 2 hours, just dipping a little bread in it and taking it through this whole process and afterwards is one of the best ways of preventing bacterial complication that might accrue from a fever, a cold, or a flu. And it's one of the best ways to take garlic if people don't mind the smell on your breath. So garlic is good for staph diseases and multi-drug resistant bacteria. It's much in the news right now. It seems like history is turning around. You know, one of the reasons why people turned away from herbs was because in the late 1920s and before the 1920s, bacterial infections were a big problem, and herbalists pretty much found the herb that would treat that very effectively when they discovered echinacea towards the end of the 1900s. And however, people like newfangled gadgets, and all the new advances in medicine was being touted, and lots of money was going into it, and so forth. And so a lot of times even a good remedy falls out of fashion. And so antibiotics and the wonder drugs, aspirin, and all those things were in. Well, you know, and they really worked beautifully. And people overdid it. They took them like crazy for everything. And And they literally forgot about echinacea, and I had to rediscover it again at the bottom of a jar in an old pharmacy in San Francisco back in the late 1960s to restart the whole echinacea craze, and I'm very proud of that of having done that. But the whole thing about this is that everything is turned around. Now we're reading that aspirin really isn't very good for you to be taking for thinning your blood for preventing heart attacks, and we're hearing that that the bacteria is now becoming resistant to antibiotics. And enter again the herbs, and these herbs like oregano oil that we're going to talk about, and garlic and echinacea, all these herbs, because they don't work like in the same way as the antibiotics. They have a different way of working. They work by actualizing and strengthening your own body's ability to fight these things off more than they do than actually killing the bacteria directly. They have that property, but they're weaker that way. But they work by optimizing your body's own ability to resist and overcome these pathogens. So garlic as one herb has come back into possible usage for these kinds of stubborn conditions. And again, these are not things where you just take 1 pill a day or 2 pills a day of an antibiotic. It's something you need to take hourly, maybe at least every 2 hours, but maybe hourly to achieve the results that you're looking for. And I would say that for any of these, the use of any of these herbs, you give it a fair shake for 3 days and see if things don't improve within 3 days before you even go to some other kind of pharmaceutical drug. So garlic treats bad breath, which is, voila, the one disease that, or garlic doesn't treat bad breath. This bad breath is the one disease that garlic causes, and so there's the herb that you can use to help treat that. Parsley, eat a bunch of it. The chlorophyll in parsley is remarkable. That's why it's so green. And chlorophyll is something that helps to kill halitosis and the germs that cause it. Now we get into cinnamon, which has received a lot of press recently as balancing blood sugar. Before we go much more deeply into the therapeutic uses of cinnamon for type 2 diabetes, which is very effective, you only need like a 1/4 teaspoon of cinnamon a day to control your blood sugar with type 2 diabetes, and it's not a hard thing to take. I mean, it's easy to throw a 1/4 teaspoon in a smoothie or just eat it straight off on anything. But there are 2 kinds of cinnamon. There's the Ceylon cinnamon, called cinnamon zelandicum or cinnamon verum, which means verum means true cinnamon, and this has a sweeter taste, and it's the one that we would hope that we're buying when we buy cinnamon in stores. Then there's cassia cinnamon, Cinnamomum cassia. It's less expensive and it has a darker color and a stronger taste, and it's the one most often used in Chinese medicine. It's often found as an adulterant in true cinnamon. It's also a great herb, but contains coumadin. Coumadin is an herbal counterpart to, contains coumarin, which is an herbal counterpart to coumadin, which is equivalent to warfarin, which is a blood thinner. So taking cinnamon in this way, for anybody who's on blood thinners, they need to be very careful. However, true cinnamon has very little or no of these coumarins in them, and that would be safe. One of the problems, of course, is that commercial cinnamon is being adulterated a lot with cassia, which is a great herb. I use it all the time in Chinese medicine. Its blood thinning properties are specifically what makes it so good for circulation. It may not be necessarily what you want, what you're looking for when you're taking true cinnamon for diabetes. Cinnamon is one of the oldest spices known. It was mentioned in the Old Testament and in Chinese writings as back as 2800 BCE. It was used by the Egyptians in embalming process, and its biochemical constituents are cinnamaldehyde, gum, tannin, mannitol, coumarins, and essential oils. A whole thing here on the coumarins and cinnamon, which we just talked about. I won't go into it, except that I'm going to suggest to you a way to test the cinnamon that you have in your cupboard, whether it is true cinnamon, cinnamon verum, or it's cassia cinnamon. You take a little bit of the powder and you put a drop of iodine on it, and if it turns blue, the darker blue it is, the more coumarins are in it. That means it's been adulterated with cassia. Now, if you happen to buy from a more reputable cinnamon distributor, a spice distributor like Frontier Herb Company, they will guarantee and specifically only sell true cinnamon, cinnamon verum. So that's a good thing to do if you're going to use it on a daily basis, because taking too much cinnamon can be toxic to children, to the livers, to the kidneys, if you overdo it. And that's the cassia form, but the other one is not so much. Cinnamon is called canela in Central America, and that's Mexico, by the way. And it's very commonly made into a tea for colds, flus, as well as for diarrhea, because it has tannins in it. Here we're talking about cinnamon cassia. That's the other one that's used in Chinese medicine. The cinnamon verum is not used in Chinese medicine. This one's hotter, and it's used to invigorate blood circulation, partially because it thins it. It gets rid of cold, it relieves pain, it promotes digestion, and it's used for pains of coldness, lumbago, and arthralgia. But after reading this, you certainly want to consider, as I do in general, the biggest risk of any herb-drug interaction is going to be giving herbs that thin the blood to patients who, especially older patients, who are routinely put on blood-thinning medications to help their cardiovascular system. Oregano, infection fighter, colds, flus, sore throats, infections, parasites, candida, systemic, colitis, food poisoning, heart disease, hypertension, insulin resistance, pre-diabetic, liver disease, metabolic syndrome, ulcers, high blood lipids, ulcers, I said that twice, depression and anxiety. You can make a douche for vaginal yeast and other types of infections with oregano. I would use a big full handful of the stuff. The oil can be diluted and applied topically for sprains, arthritis, and other pains, and for clearing age spots, applied directly topically on the skin. If you've ever tried to take oregano oil, is one of the few oils, by the way, that is used internally, and it's safe for internal use, but it is really pretty obnoxious. It's very strong, very hot, and you're better off to buy it in a specially prepared capsule and take it that way. But if you're brave enough to take it directly, then it'll work really great. Again, this has a wide use in Central America, just as we use elderflower and mint for colds and flus. Mexican people typically will use either their cinnamon tea for colds and flus, or they'll take oregano, a big handful like this of the herb, and they'll make an infusion. Infusion means you don't boil it. You just pour 2 or 3 cups of boiling water over it, and you drink it straight off that way. And indeed, it's very effective in treating all these conditions. That describes that. I've written a blog. You might enjoy going to our website, planetherbs.com, in case you haven't visited it. Leslie and I have the longest running blog continuous running blog in herbal medicine of anybody in the world, I think, at this point. Maybe Henrietta Kress might have us beat there, but she's in Sweden, so I'm just gonna say North America. Let's put it that way. But every month, we just enjoy sharing all the new things and all the things that are exciting to us about herbs on our blogs, and we have many of them now between the two of us. And someday we're thinking about putting a whole bunch of them into a book, maybe. But right now they're just there for you to just download and look over. And there's so much information there now; it's really a wealth. So visit our website, planetherbs.com, and look up the blogs, and don't just only look at the most recent ones, but go back and see if there's any of our past ones that catch your fancy. And there is one there indeed that I did on oregano oil for the treatment of MRSA. Well, fennel for bloat and gas. I always love when I go to Indian restaurants, and as you leave, they have this little candy with tiny little colored sugar things and then fennel seed mixed together. And you put a teaspoon or a tablespoon of this in your mouth, and you eat it as you're leaving an Indian restaurant. Well, that's basically for all kinds of digestive problems, heartburn, hiccups, all the things that maybe their food, this heavily spiced food might have caused. You end the meal with a little bit of fennel seed like that. And this combination of the sweet with the fennel at an Indian restaurant, I think it's called Tiff or something like that. I forget the name of it, but anyway, you can get them in Indian import stores. I always love to chow on that just before I leave. But many people don't realize that fennel is high in phytoestrogens, and is very effective for increasing the flow of mother's milk. It's also used by some for breast enlargement because of the phytoestrogen content in it. By phytoestrogen, do I mean estrogen? No, I mean phytoestrogen. These are estrogen precursors, things that the body looks at, and if it has any capacity at all to make estrogen, these phytoestrogens are things that are like building blocks that the body can use to remind itself how to put estrogen together, how to draw from these vital nutrients in these plants to make estrogen. So there's no herb that has a hormone, but a phytoestrogen will optimize hormones by helping your body create them, and that's a lot better than trying to introduce them externally if it works for you at all. So it's useful for stopped menstruation, amenorrhea, for increasing libido. Oh, there's that one again. Oh, has this some of us had any problems with increasing our sex drive anyway? Hernias and testicle pain, angina, asthma, cough, bronchitis, hypertension, diuretic, and roasted for testicle pain and urinary bladder, for salt, for heartburn, hiccups, for alcohol, for chest, lungs, or heart problems. And here we're talking about the use of the seed, 3 to 8 grams of the fresh crushed seeds in infusion. Now, if you ever walk the streets in San Francisco and you find a vacant lot, you're sure to find fennel growing voluntary all over there, all over San Francisco. I think it's the most widespread introduced medicinal herb that you'll find in San Francisco. And why is that? Because Italians love to eat fennel. They eat it like celery. You can buy it in the grocery stores now, and before it grows up and makes those seeds and starts going all over the place, where it's almost impossible to control, you take that whole bulb like that and you chop it up and you put it in a soup and boil it up, and oh man, it makes anything taste delicious. It's great by itself or great in soups that way, and that's how the Italians would have it all the time in San Francisco. And of course, when they moved, their fennel patch was left untended and the seeds just went everywhere. Okay, these cautionary tales of herbs interacting with drugs, like a few of them, especially the ones dealing with blood thinning, yeah, I really take those seriously. But this is just information to say, okay, I'll make a note of that, but don't take it too seriously. Uh, you'd probably have to take a hell of a lot of Fennel to make any problem with taking birth control hormones. So I'd say just file that somewhere in the back recesses of your brain. Or if you're happy to be applying for a professional status in the American Herbalist Guild and they ask you a question like this, be sure to say this, and everybody will impress that you really know something. But anyway, fennel may interact with tamoxifen, which is another one of those things to file in the back part of your brain, and it should be used with caution in hormone-sensitive cancers. They have the same story that is put out with soy, and there are just opposite stories that say that soy is actually really good to use for breast cancer and for hormone-sensitive cancers because these are phytoestrogens. They're not estrogen. What they do is they will occupy the receptor sites where estrogen normally would go in the body. And when they're occupied, if you don't need any estrogen, they don't turn into estrogen. They just block the estrogen from being absorbed. So there's arguments that basically go for the fact that things like fennel and soy is effective to block estrogen-sensitive cancers. Basil for promoting youthfulness. We're going to move along rather quickly now because we're over time. But let's see. Oh well, you guys are still hanging in there with hopefully on bated breath. 147 out of you, and that's pretty good. Thank you for joining me tonight. I really appreciate it. I'll try to get to your questions at the end if you have the patience to hang on. I'll try to address as many of them as I have the patience to deal with. So I notice some of you are putting some questions down there in the section where it says questions on the little bar there at the side, and I'll be glad to address those, as many of those as I can. So basil, sweet basil, the king of herbs, Italian herbs for sure. Apply the oil on the skin, diluted with olive oil for acne, and for diabetes. Basil is known to lower blood glucose, as printed in the Journal of Ethnopharmacology. There's many varieties of basil, and it's like many of these. Like I'm going to say all of these are spices that I've been talking about. They're all antioxidants, so that should be no news here. But and the idea that they prevent DNA damage, which can be the trigger for cancer. The slight clove-like smell of sweet basil comes from eugenol, which is the same pain-relieving compound found in the oil of cloves. Now that's good information, which means you don't want to boil these things because otherwise you will lose that wonderful taste. Holy basil is one of the subspecies of basil, and if you were in India, the Italian basil would be the subspecies. But this is the sacred herb of Krishna. You'll find it growing at the threshold of most village homes because it's considered to have great spiritual significance, and it's grown at the doorstep of temples, and it's offered in temples, and it's used for protection. But it's also used as a tea for influenza and for colds, flus, asthma, for upper respiratory diseases specifically. Recently, the introduction of basil and sacred basil in the West research has uncovered that it seems to be able to neutralize excess cortisol, which is a hormone, one of those hormones that's secreted as a reaction to stress. So in this regard, it's a very good tea to drink just on an ongoing basis because it helps make your mind calm because that hormone cortisol, which is created as in reaction to stress, is something that is that you don't really want circulating in your system, and holy basil neutralizes it. Thus, because it calms your mind, it can be one of the things that was discovered, that why the Hindu people consider it to be sacred and a good herb for associated with spiritual energy. Sage, Salvia officinalis, for memory, mood, and sore throat. Sage leaves can be made as a tea. Never boil them, because again, they're aromatic and the volatile oils will dissipate. They're aromatic, digestive, antibacterial, antifungal, and the unique thing about sage is that it's antihydrotic. I'll say that again. Antihydrotic means it inhibits sweating. And one more unique thing about it, and I've used it many times this way when I lived in the commune and women were having babies there, and when they tried to wean their babies, oftentimes their breasts would get swell up with milk, and it would be very painful. And sage tea was used to help dry mother's milk when the time is right to do that. So it's one of the very specific uses. So we have here fennel, which increases mother's milk, and I'll add one more that's not in our discussion. And we're going to have marshmallow root, which makes mother's milk richer. Now we're going to have sage, which dries it up. So it's a complete package that way. Maybe it should be sold as a first aid package for nursing mothers. Okay, so I don't know about this story. I'm going to tell it, but somebody mistakes the idea that sage means wisdom, and therefore it refers to intelligence and it refers to the mind. And as a result, they made a story about sage increasing memory, increasing mental capacity, and so forth. And it was studied, and they did find that it improved the cholinergic receptors on the brain cells that receive acetylcholine, which helps memory. And so maybe this was just an accident, because the word sage comes from the English word sage, which means the Latin salvia, meaning to save, referring to its healing powers. But now herbalists have discovered, and I think actually they suspected it way back in the 16th century when Culpeper recommended it for mental conditions as well, as a treatment for age-related dementia and Alzheimer's disease. Isn't this wonderful about spices? We got them doing just about everything for us, right? Okay, this familiar mustard bottles tell you about mustard seeds. Planted a lot in orchards. I mean, the seeds are deliberately planted because it prevents the parasites from climbing up the trees and getting at the fruit. And so when you go to orchards and you go to fallow fields, you'll see them planted with mustard seeds initially, and then these seeds will help kill or reduce the bad bugs in the area, and then when they're plowed under, it creates fertilizer. So it warms the lungs, expels phlegm, reduces swelling, and alleviates pain. It's specific for the lung, though it is also used to aid digestion and relieve food congestion. So in other words, if you have a lot of mucus, these spicy herbs, and with mustard being one of the ones on our topic right now, help to dry that mucus. So in order to have these therapeutic effects, you need to take a therapeutic dose, which is going to be 3 to 9 grams divided in 2 doses throughout the day or more as needed. In the old days, we used to, it was common. I mean, old days, I'm talking about, hey, back in the 40s and 50s and before, and less so in our own time. When people got any aches, sprains, or any injuries at all, they said, you needed a mustard plaster. Well, I never hear that anymore, and even herbalists don't talk about it. Doesn't mean it's not as good as it always was. And you can make a mustard plaster just by taking those French mustard, that one there, and smearing it on a cloth and applying it directly. It'll be kind of mild compared to this one, where you're going to get mustard powder and mix it with a little hot water and maybe a little bit of flour, and dry mustard is available in markets, and you mix the flour and put it together, and you spread it on a paste across the clean towel, and you fold it over once or twice. Mustard can burn. It has sulfuric. It has a kind of organic sulfur, which is really good for you, by the way, as garlic does in it. And so these things, when they're applied directly on the skin without any protective covering, can be so irritating to some people that it can blister. In any case, you spread some petroleum jelly on the skin, and then you apply it over the top, and you leave it on for only 20 minutes. You cover it with a heavy blanket. You'll see that it's going to start to heat up very quickly. Mustard plasters can be applied on the chest or the back for chest colds, flus, lung congestion, bronchitis, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, COPD for short. That's a really bad condition, by the way, as well as on painful joints and other areas in the body. And it can be reapplied every 4 to 6 hours as needed. That's all it needs to do in between to get recovery time. This was a common remedy, household remedy that everybody used throughout the farmers and people throughout the Midwest in earlier times of the 20th century. And I think it's time that this be brought back into common practice. Vanilla. It comes from the edible pod of a tropical orchid. Orchids seem to all have a property that specifically makes them useful for depression and for the mind, for calming, and for relieving anxiety and anger. I think something about these beautiful flowers, what they do to us, how they affect us when we look at them, and we're drawn to their beauty. But because it relaxes in a very special way, this is another take on our wanting to have vanilla ice cream. It's good for impotence and frigidity, erectile dysfunction, and loss of libido. So all of you lovers of vanilla, I can see why you like it so much. There's a vanilla flower, and you can, and that's where the pods come from. And vanillin is the Spanish word which means pod, which describes the part that's used. And vanilla pods are second in value, monetary value, only to saffron, which is probably going to be the next herb we're going to talk to, maybe our last one, I think. Vanilla adds flavor to our life, and of course to our sex life as well, and it's a very potent antidepressant, anti-inflammatory, and there's been a lot of studies used, and it's got over 200 phytonutrients. Now, the single most valuable of all herbs is undoubtedly saffron. All those little tiny stigmas are plucked out with tweezers out of the center of a plant. And saffron is the dried stigma of the blue saffron crocus. And a pound of dried saffron costs about $5,000, which is about 25% the cost of gold. I guess that's because gold has gone up. It used to be worth more than gold. Saffron is usually sold by the gram. It takes 80,000 crocus flowers and 250,000 hand-picked dried stigmas to produce 1 pound of saffron. Is it worth it? It's a characteristic spice used in Persian cooking. As medicine, saffron is worth it. It's an antidepressant. It's as good as fluoxetine, which is Prozac. This is the comparable to Prozac as an antidepressant. Oh, I wish it's too bad more people didn't know about it. Saffron and its antidepressant effects, it has no side effects. And you see the people out in the fields, usually in the Middle East is where this is occurring, and they're out there picking the crocus flowers, and then they're going to go in and they're going to pull the little stigmas out. It's really painstaking work. 40 people with mild to moderate depression divided into two groups. One took Prozac, and the other took 15 milligrams of saffron twice a day. 15 milligrams is not very much, by the way. After 2 months, saffron was found to be as effective as Prozac in relieving depression with absolutely no side effects, and it even increases libido, by the way, as all these things do. Another Iranian study reported in their journal called Complementary and Alternative Medicine that saffron compared saffron with the antidepressant imipramine called tofranil, which is a tricyclic antidepressant. Again, the group of 30 was divided with half taking placebo and the other half taking the spice, and saffron was found to be as effective as the drug. So saffron may work the same way that many antidepressants do, according to Iranian researchers. Two compounds in saffron, crocin and safranal, protect levels of several brain chemicals: serotonin, the one that makes you happy; dopamine, the one that makes you and norepinephrine, that creates more alertness. They boot and stabilize your mood. Chinese researchers found that the crocin was the active ingredient in the spice, as published in their Journal of Naturopathic Medicine. So the other uses of saffron are for atherosclerosis, Alzheimer's disease, menstrual irregularities, impotence, erectile dysfunction, anxiety and insomnia, and memory loss. I'm going to go take some as soon as we finish this. I'm getting inspired here. Age-related macular degeneration. Oh, that's a big one, boys. A lot of people get that as they get older and they go blind from it. So this was published in the Journal of Ocular Pharmacology and Therapeutics. It's also good for Parkinson's and multiple sclerosis. How to take saffron. Most of the studies using saffron for depression, Alzheimer's, anxiety, and so forth use only 30 milligrams of saffron taken in 2 doses daily. An ounce of saffron is anywhere from $60 to $80 in today's market, and actually cheaper today. I bought quite a bit of it for 50, 60 bucks on, of course, Amazon. Amazon sells everything. And so there's a lot of milligrams in an ounce, and divided by 30 days, one gets approximately 940 days, or about 2.5 years worth of saffron doses. The cost of Prozac, 40 milligrams of Prozac, costs $398.49 a month. So is it worth it? Yes, it is. That's what I said when we first started. At these prices, one could afford to take 60 milligrams of saffron for depression and come out way ahead without the sometimes serious adverse effects of the more expensive drug. Saffron is also a potent blood mover and should not be taken, of course, if people are on blood thinning medication, nor if a woman is pregnant. It's one of the most potent blood movers there is in herbal medicine, which is generally a good thing for all of us, by the way. And I would say that if you are on a blood mover, see if you can get your physician to either cut back the dose or taking off of it and start taking herbs instead. So instead of cutting out the herbs, you cut out the blood thinning drugs. I think you'll be a lot better off. There's no side effects with the herbs. Sometimes the petals of safflower are sold as saffron. This is called bastard saffron. And safflower does have blood-moving properties, but it doesn't do what saffron does. So it has nothing near the flavor, the potency, the benefit of saffron. So saffron in the kitchen. A little saffron goes a long way. You only need a pinch in soups, stews, risotto, paella, and other rice dishes. A pinch is enough for 4 to 6 people. For every teaspoon of saffron, soak it for a minimum of 2 hours or for as long as 12 hours. If you can think that far ahead, I oftentimes don't think that far ahead when I'm creating dinner, but if you're really making a really special dinner for some very special guests and you want to have a little Persian flair to it, where you're going to throw some raisins and some pine nuts into your rice, and you're going to make saffron rice. Boy, is that ever good. So this is the way to do it. You soak it for 2 hours for as long as 12 hours before. And the leaves expand to 1.5 their size. And a quick method is to soak it in 5 teaspoons of liquid for 20 minutes. Crush the back or soon in a ceramic mortar. So in other words, mash it up until you make a thick paste with it. Then you can add it to any dish when needed. You can store the saffron. It's very light sensitive. It's very sensitive to light and moisture. So store it in a container from sunlight. And if stored properly, it will keep for years. The saffron up there, by the way, is in a metal container, and that's the way I bought it, and that's the way it is. So there is some delicious dishes, and I'm getting a little hungry. It's past my dinner time here. It's 7 o'clock on the West Coast, and some of you probably, we only lost a few people. Still 132 of you are hanging out, and I bet all of you ate. A lot of you ate before we got on. But anyway, if you didn't, it's too late to make anything with saffron. So that's all for tonight. I'm going to now entertain some of your questions, and if you feel like splitting, fine. So here we go. Here's one. Let's see if I can open it up. Hey, my dear, wonderful, beautiful assistant, Pamela, are you there?
I am here.
I know she's fumbling around to get the microphone.
I'm not fooling around. I'm right here.
Ah, yes. I didn't say fooling around. I said fumbling around to get the microphone working.
Oh, okay.
Can you read the questions to me? How many are there?
There's quite a few, but someone asked about, let me see. Well, we've had a recurring question about whether or not this webinar will be accessible after this evening and whether or not the notes will also be provided for people. So let's get that one out of the way first.
Well, what do you think? I think so.
I think so too.
All right, there we go. We did record it. Okay. We did remember to press the record button, didn't we?
We did. It's recording right now.
All right, let's go on.
Okay, next one. Is there a difference between flat leaf and curly leaf parsley?
No.
Okay.
That's not an official opinion. That's my off-the-cuff opinion.
Aside from textural differences, I don't think that there's much of a difference either. So the next question is it true that cilantro is good for chelation of metals off of the brain? I've heard this to help with autism.
Well, there's some debate about that. You know, that whole thing started with somebody doing some kinesthesia. You know, that's that stuff where you wave a pendulum or you do muscle testing, and some doctor decided to do something like that, and he found it to be useful for heavy metals, and somehow or other that got out under the airways, and it caught on, and everybody started taking it for that. Got to watch out what you say, but so I've questioned it and questioned. Then I asked my associate, because we have cilantro in a planetary product as a single agent with the idea that people are going to take it for that purpose. And my colleague and friend Roy Upton said, yeah, there have been some studies that show that it does diminish heavy metals. But you know, when I read those studies, I say to myself, well, okay, those studies are there, but how many other herbs might be diminishing heavy metals, maybe even better than cilantro? So my question is yes. My answer is yes, but okay.
Yes,
Next
but okay.
Or yes, well.
Or yes, well. Another person asked, can people with dairy intolerance to cows but can handle goat dairy handle ghee made from cow's milk? Can you make ghee from goat butter as well?
Boy, that is a question and a half. I have never heard of that one. I never heard anybody make ghee from goat's butter. I can't answer that. No, I cannot.
Well, I guess the person can figure it out.
Yeah, let us know.
The next question is, do you recommend using kitchari as a cleanse in the spring and fall?
Oh yes, kitchari is especially, all those fruit juice fasts. There's a whole question about cleanse. What are we cleansing when we're cleansing? I like to think that we're just basically giving our organs a rest. And by giving our organs a rest, they get rejuvenated. But are you actually getting rid of anything? Because your body, your organs normally do a pretty good job of keeping things clean. So the concept of cleanse is something that I'm happy to say is modifying, but we throw the term around anyway. But in the category of giving your organs a rest, it puts things in a different frame of mind, because if you give your organs a rest, it means you're going to work more efficiently at cleansing after you've stopped that period of time when you decided to do that. And so I think that one of the great benefits of kitchari is that you can do it year round. It's good in the summertime, and it's especially good in the wintertime when drinking cold fruit juices in certain climates may not be the best thing to be doing. Next question.
Okay. With the treatment of psoriasis and shingles with cayenne as an ointment, what would you mix it with?
Boy, I think I would mix it with petroleum, with Vaseline, because it's not something you want to absorb into the body. You want it to have its stimulant effects on top of the body. These conditions look really fiery and inflamed and hot and so forth, but actually a lot of times they're caused by people who are very cold metabolically, and so it's the heat that's flushing out of the body that is manifesting with these topical skin diseases. The reason I say that is because I've gotten great results doing moxibustion, which is applying. Oh, you got a cat that's out of control there.
I'm sorry.
So anyway, I've used moxa directly on psoriasis, and that gives people more relief than just about anything you could imagine. So I would say that it's the heating and the stimulating effect of the capsaicin or cayenne on the surface of the body that's going to give relief from the itching, and when you give relief from the itching, then the sores start to heal. Next question.
All right. Is there any harm to eating? I'm assuming the person wrote this raw. I'm assuming that they're talking about. Oh, okay. So they're talking about, is there any harm to eating fennel raw because they miss licorice because of its wheat contents?
They miss licorice because of its what?
Wheat content. So they're wondering if eating fennel raw is a problem or an issue.
No, it's not an issue, but I would recommend that you go read my last 3 blogs on the possibility that maybe you don't have a wheat problem, and that's all. So anyway, go check that out. Go ahead.
All right. So the next question is, what is the difference between oil of oregano essential oil? Is oil of oregano infused oil, or what is it? And because essential oil is steam distilled from the plant material.
Yeah, the oil of oregano is a steam distilled oil. Doesn't mean you can't make a maceration of oil by putting the oregano in olive oil, but it's going to be very weak compared to the steam distilled oil. And of course, anything like that you're going to buy, you want to buy it from a company who is very reputable, that makes food grade essential oils. Next question.
All right, so someone is asking about cayenne in reference to stopping bleeding. Would you be able to go into that a little bit more?
Well, I've had a few cases where people have had a lot of bleeding from a vein or an artery, and we just took a handful of cayenne and just threw it right on it, and it stopped it. It doesn't burn that way. It seems counterintuitive, but it really does work. And for internal bleeding, it also will help conditions. Like for instance, cayenne is one of the best things to use for the thing that everybody thinks they should avoid it for, which is for ulcers. Dr. Christopher used it all the time on ulcers and bleeding ulcers and so forth. I would start out very gently with that because I haven't used it a long time for those purposes. And as I said, back in the 1970s, that was a major herb in my practice, and I remember never seeing a single case of anybody having a bad reaction to cayenne pepper. And we've all become a little wimpier since then, so we don't use it so much anymore. So I'm not that contemporary with it as I used to be. So I would say start out gradually with it. But the one thing I failed to mention is that I once met a man from Ghana, that's in Africa, and boy, they take cayenne there like it's out of style. They take it every day because they feel that cayenne prevents you from catching any disease, and I think it does. Next question.
Question revolving around cayenne: is using fresh cayenne as effective as the powdered / dried form?
Yes.
Okay. Is cayenne mixed with Vaseline indicated for the skin condition? It looks like it says itch or LCH.
I don't know what that is.
I don't know what that is either.
She probably meant itch.
Probably. Can coconut?
Or he did.
Excuse me?
Or he did. I don't know.
Or he did. Can coconut oil be used as an alternative to petroleum jelly for the uses you've mentioned?
Sure. Vaseline is the better thing to use if you want an herb to exert its effect only on the skin and not be absorbed very well or very, very effectively.
Okay.
So it's got a very, very good use that way.
What is a good dose for cumin with regulating blood glucose levels?
I think that was in the notes as we did this. Again, I would probably go with my 2 double-odd capsules 2 or 3 times a day, because you just can't lose with that dose. It's not too much. It's not too little.
Okay. Let's see. The next question that wouldn't be found by going back through and rewatching the webinar is it okay to tincture saffron in alcohol?
Oh no. Ooh, what a waste of saffron. No, don't do that. Yeah, you could tincture anything probably, but the point of it is that tinctures have their place, but it's really saffron is just so special. You want to eat it. It's easy to eat a little bit of saffron 3 times a day. It really is.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
Let's see. We have some comments about the ghee for dairy intolerance, and the general consensus is that if you're intolerant to dairy, it does not mean that you cannot consume ghee made from cow's milk because you've removed the milk solids that are part of the problem with consuming dairy. So you'll apparently be safe.
Yeah, I think that's true, and I would say, if you, our mind always plays funny tricks on us, and I don't say that to be belittling to anybody, because my mind plays a lot of funny tricks on me all the time. So it's just we're prone to that, and people start saying things, and they start believing things, and it starts going around. We're humans are basically a herding animal. It's like when you put a human in solitary confinement in a jail, it's one of the most inhumane things you can possibly do. I think about that almost every night before I go to bed, the people who are in solitary confinement. And so that means that we're constantly learning from each other. We're constantly being influenced by the thoughts and the words and the ideas from each other, and we're susceptible to that. And with so much being floating around us all the time, it's no wonder 18 million people think that they have gluten sensitivity when I dare say that very few of those people really do. And it's definitely something you should revisit and look at, because it's terrible to cut yourself off from such an important food source as wheat, for instance, entirely. Although if you're trying to lose weight, as we know, it's a good idea. So did that answer the question? I don't know. What do you think?
I think so. And I think that you answered all the questions relevant to the topic at hand as well with the webinar.
All right. Well, thank you very much, everybody, and stay tuned for next month when we're going to talk about triphala. Triphala is one herbal formula that I think that after you have a good diet, the next thing that's important is take triphala. And everybody should take it every day.